Hey everybody, in this video I'll be looking at the Enchanter Spells from Frostgrave's 2nd edition and comparing them to their 1st edition versions. Hey everybody, I'm Alan with Bricks and Blocks Gaming, the channel that plays tabletop games using toy bricks and blocks and discusses the rules and strategies that build the foundation for those games. Be sure to check the description box below where you'll find timestamps, links to some of our other Frostgrave content, and a link to Osprey Games' official PDF that explains all the rules for all the spells for Frostgrave's 2nd edition. This video does assume at least some familiarity with one of the 2 editions of Frostgrave and is part of a 10 video series where I'm looking at each wizard school and discussing all the spells for the 2nd edition game of Frostgrave. And for that, I'll be discussing the removed spells, the slightly changed or completely overhauled spells, new spells, and my personal opinion about the changes. In the 1st edition, I felt that the Enchanter spells formed the most well-rounded of all the wizard schools. They had spells to buff your soldiers, to move treasure around the board, you could create constructs, you could create magical weapons and armor that you could either use to equip your soldiers or sell, and they even had a ranged area effect attack spell. Whether I was creating an enchanter or trying to pick one enchanter spells for an aligned wizard, there were many options available. Now, let's take a look at the bricks and blocks that make up the Frostgrave 2nd edition Enchanter spells. For starters, the school retains all 8 of its original spells, so nothing was either removed or added from their school. Most of these spells had just minor tweaks and changes. Animate Construct is probably the most iconic spell for the Enchanter, and it allows the spellcaster to enchant a structure made of wood, metal, or other materials, bringing it to life as a member of their warband. The casting number was increased from 8 to 10. The letter B in parentheses was added in the description to let you know it can only be cast before the game, not after. Small and medium constructs are now classified as a standard soldier for 2nd edition, while large constructs are classified as the new specialist soldier type. And keep in mind that under the new rules, you're limited to 4 specialist soldiers in your warband. It's clarified you can have any number of constructs, so long as you don't surpass the normal warband restrictions on soldiers. Also worth noting is that all 3 types of constructs have had their fight stat increased, and the large construct now deals extra damage in combat. And keep in mind that they are all immune to poison, and they really shine if you're using the optional wounded rule, because constructs aren't affected by that. Also, there are a few items you can find that are specific to constructs, so you can actually power up your constructs a little bit as you progress through your campaign. Control Construct lets you take control of an opponent's or an uncontrolled construct. This spell essentially remains the same. The language is made clearer, and now you're allowed to use an action to cancel the spell as well. And this could be useful if a more enticing target comes into view. This spell does remain as the most situational of all of the Enchanter spells. Enchant Armour lets you increase an armor-wearing soldier's armor stat by +1. Assuming their current armor isn't already magical. This spell also stays essentially the same, except just keep in mind that there is now a cap on how high you can raise a soldier's armor stat to 15. Enchant Weapon similarly increases fight or shoot stat for a figure equipped with a non-magical weapon by +1. Enchanted melee weapons, or one-shot projectiles, will do magic damage, but keep in mind that enchanted bows or crossbows do not. You're still allowed to enchant both your ranged weapon, like your bow or your crossbow, and your projectile, your arrow or your bolt. However, they don't stack anymore in the 2nd edition, so you have to choose whether you're using your bonus from your weapon or your bonus from your projectile, not both. Embed Enchantment allows you to permanently embed an Enchant Armour or Enchant Weapon spell into an item. The description adds the A in parentheses for the quick reference that it is still cast after a game and not before. The first actual change here is the casting number was raised from 12 to 14. also changed is that it will only affect an item that was enchanted during the battle. In first edition, you could attempt to cast Enchant Weapon or Armor out of game before attempting Embed Enchantment, if you didn't have any other viable targets. I'll point out that magical equipment is now more expensive to purchase, and gold crowns are a little harder to come by, so being able to create your own could prove to be quite valuable. Also, if you decide to sell your equipment, a weapon of fight +1 and light armor of +1 sell for 200 gold crowns now instead of 150, so you can make more. And something interesting is if you look at the weapon and armor table in the book, there's no longer heavy armor or mail armor +1. So the only way to get that is to create it with the Embed Enchantment spell. And with that, there's also no price given for selling a suit of mail armor +1. I'm guessing it would be 200 gold crowns, but I don't have any confirmation of that. Strength empowers a figure with magical strength. This spell is word for word the same in both editions, and is still a solid choice in second edition because fight +2 is always a good thing to have. Telekinesis uses magical energy to move treasure across the battlefield. The casting number was increased from 8 to 10. The range was reduced from 24 inches down to 16 inches. It's stated that it cannot affect the centralized treasure token on the board until after that token has been picked up for the first time. And it's clarified the spell doesn't affect treasure that has special requirements for being picked up, or those being carried by figures. So the power for this spell has been reined in a bit, which I think is healthy for both the spell and for the game. Grenade enchants a small rock or object that makes it explode on contact when thrown. The word magic is added before the word attack. The range is increased from 12 inches to 14 inches. And now it's stated the target point is used to determine line of sight and cover modifiers for those affected by the spell. This is huge because even if you can't see an enemy that's hiding behind something, you can lob a grenade at a point where you can barely see that's behind or next to the figure, and roll your dice as if you had clear line of sight. With these improvements and the fact that it still has a casting number of 10 and a blast radius of 1.5 inches, and keep in mind that's from a target point, not a target figure, even with it being a shooting attack of just +3, I think it makes a pretty good case for being the best area effect shooting attack in the game. Looking over all these spells, I would say there's no huge changes here with these spells. However, the change to the difficulty of casting Telekinesis will probably be good for the game. And even though creating magic weapons and armor will be a little tougher, it's still worth the effort. With the new rules, thugs and thieves are now free to hire, and because of this, I think that animating small constructs has lost some of its usefulness, but creating medium constructs with their improved fight stat will be a solid choice for a standard soldier. And the large constructs, while slow, now have the best combat stats of any soldier in the game. And with Strength and Grenade still being great spells, I think that the Enchanter School remains being one of the most well-rounded schools in the game. So those are the second edition Enchanter spells. If I missed a change or got something wrong, let me and the community know in the comments below, as my goal with these videos is to create an accurate resource for the Frostgrave community. I want to thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, feel free to click like, add a comment, or subscribe so you can keep up with all the content that I'm releasing. And with that, I'm Alan with Bricks and Blocks Gaming, and I'll see you in the next video.